Now let's take a look at the finance section of the event management form. This is by far one of the more complex areas and also one of the areas that has the most rules. So again, it's important that the territories put in some kind of finance rep or that the approvers work with the submitter to make sure they understand all the different sections. Let's walk through it now and I'll try to highlight what I can. So the first section is revolving around PEX funding. In PEX funding section, we have an area where we can put in the names of the people that need their PEX card funded as well as the dollar amounts. We can break down lots of different categories including airfare, meals, printing, lodging, fuel, and then anything else. We have a notes field where we want to put in all the detail about why we're asking for certain levels of funding. So we've got a blurb about airfare, we've got a breakdown of the meals, and it's important that even though we have individual fields for these things, we still want to put in how we arrived at those numbers. And for those that are using the logistics worksheet that we have, you can use the number of days and the number of attendees, and you can use these drop downs, whether there's going to be breakfast provided or not, lunch or dinner provided, and then there's a built-in $5 per person per day for snacks. So we arrive at $440 in this case for that number of people, and we can still put in that dollar amount here, and then of course we want to put in the breakdown so that whenever the finance reps checking this out, then they understand how we arrived at these different numbers. We also have another section where we can have things like mileage or really anything else that's reimbursable. So this will do the basic calculation for you. It doesn't have to be exact because a lot of times people don't even put in for their mileage on the back end. And so we can put in an estimated number of people, how many miles, and then it's got a built-in calculation to multiply that by 0.545, and we arrive at an automatically calculated mileage cost. If there were anything else that was going to be reimbursed, we can add it here and of course put in the notes. Each section is subtotaled and the overall total goes into the total funding requested here on the upper right. The TR Exchange section is for any type of printed materials that are ordered from TR Exchange. That could be flyers or business cards, things of that nature. Direct billing is for Home Depot, Enterprise, any of the third-party organizations that we have a direct billing agreement with. Other handles basically anything else we can think of. If it doesn't go on a PEX card and we're not being directly billed, there shouldn't be too much stuff that comes in here under other, because you'd think it would be handled in one of these other sections, but you never know, so we added it. All these other fields are automatically calculated so that the total funding requested shows up here. Depending on the overall total funding requested, this will expand and contract the number of approvers that are involved with this event as well. Then we have a finance review section for the finance rep that's assigned to this particular geographical area if you guys are using one. And this person is notified as soon as the event is submitted. This person will get a notification to come in here and look at the plan for finance and make sure that it makes sense and it's the same plan. They have a couple different options. They can mark that it's in progress. They can say there's changes needed and put in notes about the changes. And if they were to do that and hit save, then it would send that back to the submitter to ask them to make the changes. They can also they have the ability to edit the section directly if it's just a little bit off and they don't want to have to tell the submitter. Depending on how the territory wants to handle that, the finance people have the ability to go in and change the numbers if they are allowed to do that. Once they have hit save, then their name, whoever reviewed it, and the date and time will populate automatically. And then we have an optional finance code because some territories like to put in their own finance code per each event, and then they can map that on the back end through Expensify to see how much money that particular event costs. We also have a national admin area. So this is where National Finance, Alan Sotelo and crew will come in, and whenever the event is approved, if there's PEX funding involved, then they will come in here and take a look at the funding, make sure that it makes sense, hopefully look to see if it's been checked by the reps and approved, and then they can either say that there's changes needed and write a note, or they can do their third-party funding procedure and then come back here and say funding complete. They can put in the dollar amount of how much was funded, and it's likely to be close to what the PEX funding total is, but if they choose to, they can pad it a little bit more, and they'll put in how much they funded. Then the regional finance people as well as the national finance people have the ability to lock down the PEX fields, and so they can click this button, and by clicking this button you'll see on the left hand side here all these lock icons show up, and what that does is that makes it so that you can no longer click into the PEX area and change it. So only certain people have the ability to lock or unlock those fields, and that way we don't have any surprises if a certain dollar amount got approved and funded, and then all of a sudden somebody goes in and changes something inside the event form. Again, whoever reviewed this will have their name and date stamped here. And then last but not least, we have an emergency PEX funding request section, which is reserved for whenever the event itself is already funded. If the submitter or one of the approvers or somebody figures out that they actually didn't request enough money, then the submitters can come in here and say that they need additional money. They can put in notes as to why. They can put in a requested dollar amount, and when they hit save, it's going to automatically go back to the level 4 approver, even if there was no level 4 approver on this. And level 4 approvers are the DDROs. So the DDRO for this particular geographic area will be alerted saying that there's been an emergency funding request, and then he or she will go in and say whether it's approved or not, right here. And if this is approved, then that will automatically send a note back to National Finance requesting the additional funds, where they can come back in and say it's been completed. So they would check this box and show that an additional $500 was put on probably whoever was named in these notes. You'd want to make sure to put in the name of whoever needs the additional funding. And that's it. So pretty complex area. We've added a number of fields to try to account for most things that can happen on the events, but we know for sure that we don't have every little thing, and that's by design so far. But if you do have recommendations on what else we should add, let us know in the feedback, and we'll see you in the next video.